It's Saturday night, and your favorite cousin came over to spend the night. It's just the two of you, free to do whatever you please. Sounds like a fun weekend, right? Unfortunately, this ideal scenario ended up in a horrifying way. It was 1998. Jaden's younger cousin Miles was staying over while their parents went out bowling. Their parents always met every Saturday night to go bowling, leaving Jaden to care for little Miles. The rain was pouring, so their parents were going to be late. But it's nothing that Jaden can't handle. Two cousins have always enjoyed a fun and upbeat relationship, as would any kid of their age. He's been doing this for quite a while now and knows how to entertain and keep Miles busy. Another Saturday night for the two. Miles was already worn out. He could barely string words together as his eyes started to close. Jaden's exhausted as well, aimlessly browsing through the channels to see if there's anything entertaining to watch. His eyes kept darting at the clock. It was already midnight, and their parents were still nowhere to be found. Jaden went to the kitchen to try and find some late-night snack. He switched on the radio as he made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. A family of 4 was slain following a break-in 2 hours ago at Mulberry Street. A couple, along with their 2 children, were found murdered in their bedroom. Authorities have yet to capture the culprit. This marks the first incident of murder following numerous reports of break-ins that have plagued the town of Fairfield. The sheriff's office has launched an official investigation regarding the murder and its connection to the recent string of break-ins. Authorities are advising residents to remain indoors and lock them. Stay safe out there, folks. Mulberry Street was where one of Jaden's classmates lived. They lived near Jaden Street. Jaden remained calm. He locked the back door and propped a chair up against it. He walked out of the kitchen and saw a figure of a man watching behind the window. Jaden froze right where he stood. The man was peering inside the house and watching young Miles as he slept. His attention then turned to Jaden, and he stared the boy down before disappearing into the darkness. Jaden rushed to the front door, locked it, and secured it in place with a sturdy cabinet. Miles awakened to the sound of moving furniture and asked Jaden, "What's wrong?" Jaden's heart was racing. He was stuttering his words, urging his cousin to come with him upstairs. He bribed Miles with his Nintendo. He locked the door to the room and grabbed a guitar stand. Jaden was shaking, telling himself that their parents would be home soon. While Miles occupied himself with the video games, Jaden's heart raced. He braced himself for what might come. The night was still and silent, nothing but the whimsical tunes emanating from the Nintendo while the rain poured outside. The stillness was broken when Jaden heard a sharp crash like glass breaking. The noise was subtle and originated from downstairs. The crash was followed by the creaking sound of wood and then the faint sound of cracking glass. The man was inside the house. Jaden stood by the door, grabbing the guitar stand like a blunt weapon. The boy's hands were trembling but ready to swing. He couldn't feel anything but the intense throbbing of his heart and the chilling atmosphere of the night. He heard faint footsteps, slowly getting more pronounced. Someone was closing in on them. He heard doors getting opened, cabinets opening and closing, then the footsteps grew louder, ascending the stairs. Jaden's mind went blank. He asked Miles to hide in the closet. Miles asked, "What's going on?" He was scared. Jaden put on a brave face for the little one. Told him that they're going to play a prank and he needs Miles to remain quiet in the closet until he says otherwise. His voice cracked. He told Miles that everything's going to be all right, as if he was bidding his cousin goodbye. Miles dug into the closet and put his hand over his mouth. He grabbed Jaden's hand and asked him to stay with him. Jaden pulled his hand and reassured little Miles. They're both terrified. The door slammed shut outside the room, followed by another, and then another. The footsteps crack, creak. It's loud and imposing. Jaden silently moved the bed against the door, but just then the doorknob turned. Jaden hid behind the bed, gripping the guitar stand with all his might. The doorknob turned frantically, followed by a series of banging on the door. Each strike resonated throughout the house, growing stronger after each bang. The door wouldn't hold. Jaden braced himself and looked at his closet. He put on a smile for his little cousin. A familiar sound stopped the banging, the sound of a car pulling up the driveway. The intruder departed and headed downstairs. Jaden pulled his bed cautiously as he opened the door, looking for any sign of the visitor. It seemed as though the coast was clear. Jaden told Miles to remain in the closet as Jaden made his way through the hallway, eager to greet his parents. He arrived at the edge of the stairs and sees a ghastly sight. The intruder stood at the edge of the stairs. A tall and slender man wearing a rundown hospital gown. His hands covered in fresh blood and muck from the rain. His bloodshot eyes were swollen, looking directly into Jaden's. Jaden heard his father's voice asking him to remove the cabinet from the entrance. The intruder departed. Jaden regained his composure and slowly made his way downstairs. He opened the door and told his parents what had transpired. His father immediately pulled the boy to his mother and went straight for the kitchen. But this time, By this time, the intruder was gone, leaving behind a mess of broken glass, blood, and mud trailing across the floor, leaving young Jaden a terrible scar that will haunt him for eternity. Moving to a new place can be a great way to start over. New places, new faces, and new opportunities. Sometimes our new homes pose new and terrifying problems for new residents. A dilemma that Courtney would soon face with her new apartment. Courtney has always dreamed of living independently in a big city, where she could put down roots and carve a place for herself and her two cats, Phyllis and Philippa. So when opportunity came, Courtney grabbed it and set out into the world. Her new apartment was bigger and better than her last place. It was spacious enough for the three of them and close enough to her office. The only bad thing worth mentioning was a whiff of a foul odor that came and went. The landlord blamed a rat infestation in a nearby building, but assured Courtney that no such thing would reach them. It was perfect, or so she thought. The signs began to show after her first week. Lights turning on in the bathroom, the sink would turn on in the middle of the night. Courtney dismissed it all, product of her hazy memory, blaming the stress from work as the culprit for her lapsing memory. These occurrences became more frequent and random as the days passed by. More and more troubling signs began to manifest. Things going out of place, plates and glasses falling out of their table, cabinets swinging open, and chairs and tables moving from one place to another. In some instances, Courtney will hear scratching sounds coming from within the walls. Sometimes she'd see something in the corner of her eye zip past her. Even her cats were experiencing duress. The usually playful and lively Phyllis is becoming more reclusive, always clinging on to Courtney and hiding under the table, while the friendly and aloof Philippa is becoming more and more agitated at seemingly nothing, chasing after something that isn't there. Every night is a nightmare for the two, Phyllis running scared to Courtney and Philippa seemingly on edge from someone or something. Someone has made themselves at home. Courtney's mind raced at the thought of an unseen presence looming over her and her cats. She could barely sleep anymore from all the commotion. She began to secure her glassware, lock her doors, shut tight the cupboards, but nothing. The unexplained phenomena continued. She decided to report her experience with the landlord, only to leave her landlord dumbstruck and concerned over her well-being. She was at her wit's end. The exhaustion and fear of her unwelcome visitor forced her to divulge her experience to her friends. Despite her closeness to them, Courtney still hesitated to reveal her story in fear of being mocked by her own friends. Luckily for her, as her friends are more than happy to hear her out, she spilled the beans. Her friends came over to spend the night with her and keep guard. Courtney and her friends, understandably on edge, cautious of every noise and movement, hours passed by with no incident occurring. Courtney's reassured by her friends that they'll remain by her side as they sleep. Hours passed as Courtney and her two friends slept peacefully, but that peace was shattered when the sound of broken glass emanated from the kitchen. The three awoke from their slumber, dazed, confused, and terrified. They ran to the kitchen and arrived to see a mess left behind, plates and glass shattered across the floor, the sink left open with water pouring on the floor, and the cabinets open with claw marks. Phyllis and Philippa were nowhere to be found. Courtney called out their names to no avail. A ruckus started inside one of the cabinets with distinct meows of a cat from inside. Suddenly, the cabinet doors burst open, revealing Phyllis in a violent entanglement with a large rat. The two were fighting across the floor and exchanging scratches. Courtney picked up a broom and managed to separate her wounded feline from the feral rodent. The size and demeanor of the rat stunned Courtney and her friends. It certainly explains the shattered ceramicware and unexpected aggression of her cats. The rat retreated back inside the cupboard, revealing a large hole in the wall. It squirmed its way inside and disappeared into the darkness. But their torment was far from over as the rat skittered inside the hole. The walls began to creak and crack, creating a long and overreaching crack that reached the ceiling. Something was coming. Phyllis hissed as the ceiling walls began to crack and sunk lower. The cracks grew and spewed out rat after rat. The ceiling caved in and collapsed, revealing a whole swarm of rats that had been living within the walls. Philippa emerged from the swarm as the rats dispersed, revealing a terrifying sight. A completely consumed, mummified corpse had been staying in the ceiling this whole time, providing the rats a meal to consume for months. A hapless and unidentified victim of the swarm. If you've been truly frightened by any of my stories, hit subscribe so you don't miss any of them. Being a kid left alone in your own house can be a fun and liberating experience. You're in charge, no one can tell you what to do. But for some, it can be a bit disturbing. It begs the question, how safe are you in your own home? Stick around, we'll tell you how a situation that's supposed to be fun and exciting turned into something spine-chilling for young Harold. It was Harold's last day of school. The summer was dawning on the horizon, and young Harold could not wait for it to come. He had been planning this day for weeks. Dad won't be home until 8. His mom and older sister went shopping to prepare for her 18th birthday. His oldest brother Chad went on a road trip with his friends, and he won't be back until next week. The house was empty, and Harold was the only one home for the time being. He could barely contain his excitement, so he left his bike on the front porch, stormed immediately into the living room. Opening the TV and booting up Chad's Xbox, he went to the kitchen to prepare himself a sandwich with a liter of Coke to quench his thirst. This was Harold's day, and nothing was going to ruin it. He played for hours, his eyes glued to the screen, his attention fixated on playing Fortnite. Hours passed by, and the sunny sky had already been replaced by the night's darkness. His stomach rumbled. He got up from his seat and headed towards the kitchen to make dinner. As Harold microwaved the leftovers from last night, the bushes outside the kitchen rustled. Harold didn't mind this, of course, probably a raccoon scrounging for food. Something caught Harold's eye. Behind the bushes emerged a shadowy figure. The darkness obscured the figure's appearance. Harold was left speechless and unable to move as the shadowy figure moved closer to the window. Harold snapped back to consciousness when the phone rang. It was his mother. They decided to meet up with their father before going home, she told him. They're going to be a little bit late. Harold asked his mother if she could hurry up, to which his mother replied that she'll do her best before hanging up. Harold looked toward the window again. The shadowy figure vanished. He reluctantly made his way back to the living room with his eye turned toward the kitchen window the whole time. He continued playing, trying to get his attention away from the shadowy figure he saw. Harold's concentration broke as a sudden and loud creak came from the front door. The door was open. Harold swore that he locked it before. He approached the door and peeked outside, hoping to see one of his friends. Nobody was there. He closed the door and locked it and stood there for a few seconds, looking through the peephole to see if anyone showed up. Harold jumped when he heard a loud crash. It came from down the hallway. He slowly made his way down the hallway, and he heard footsteps and metal clanging from the end where the basement door was found. He peeked through the corner at the edge of the hallway. The noises kept going, growing louder with each passing second until they abruptly stopped. Footsteps began to emanate from the basement door, getting louder as they got near to the door before pausing for a few seconds. 3 knocks followed, then another and another, growing louder with each force after the knocks. The doorknob turned and the basement door slowly creaked open. Light couldn't reach the other side of the door. Words came from the darkness and uttered a faint whisper. "Harold?" The boy immediately ran up the stairs, banging into Chad's room and locking the door. He grabbed one of Chad's baseball bats and hid in his closet. Minutes passed by in silence. Not a peep or a word can be heard. Harold began hearing footsteps again, approaching Chad's room and twisting the doorknob. Harold gripped the baseball bat with his dear life, ready to swing and take on whatever was on the other side. The door was unlocked and swung open. The lights to Chad's room was switched off, and the only illumination came from the hallway. There it was, a shadowy figure standing directly in Chad's doorway. Harold came out of the closet and swung the bat like a maniac until he heard a familiar voice. "Harold, calm down, it's me. Put the bat down." The lights switched on, revealing the shadowy figure to be Chad, who had arrived earlier than anticipated. He made fun of his brother for how scared he was, to which Harold countered and blamed Chad for playing a prank on him. "What prank? I just got here. By the way, you locked the front door, so I had to get in through the window, genius." That can't be right. Harold wasn't certain that it was Chad the whole time. Suddenly, the power went out. Their house was covered in pitch-black darkness. The stairs began to creak. Someone approached. From the dark came whispers, and they called out one name. "Harold?" If you've been truly frightened by any of my stories, hit subscribe so you don't miss any of them. There's nothing worse than being at a friend's house for a late-night party and not having a scary story to tell.